Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Tyrion Cuthbert, Attorney of the Arcane. Uh, I started recording this earlier, and I realized that my mic wasn't down, so you wouldn't have been able to hear me. Luckily, it was only like 5 minutes into the recording, so it's all good. Last time we met Celeste and Flynnheart. Flynnheart died. We saw who killed him. We saw the murderer. We saw the murder happen. But, Celeste was arrested for the murder, even though she didn't commit it. Anyways, let's go talk to her. She's gonna... See? There? She's gonna be in the dungeon. Celeste was going to be detained in Ratholm, Wyvernguard's capital city. She was apparently the prime suspect in Flynnheart's murder. Her case would be pushed to trial within the day. Supposedly, they discovered traces of magic at the crime scene. That honestly just raised even more questions. Miss Timora and I were determined to get to the bottom of this. The Inquisition, on the other hand, did what they always did. This is ridiculous. She has a right to speak to an attorney.
Yeah, well, we can't let you see her until she's been processed.
Orem White, occupation knight, age 64. The grumpy and apathetic leader of the Arcane Inquisition, who's had a personal grudge against Miss Timora for as long as I can remember. Orem White was the commander of the Arcane Inquisition. Miss Timora had supposedly run into him many times. He always looked like the textbook definition of someone who was too old for this shit. I didn't usually come near Miss Timora to her crime scenes, but the few times I had, he was always there to run interference. He always looked like he cared more about making trouble for us than actually doing his job. The Inquisition was deep in the nobility's pockets. I'd always assumed that they were paying him to sabotage us. Don't give me that. There's no way you haven't processed her with a trial this close.
Yeah, well, unless you can prove it, I don't need to do anything.
What's with all this noise?
The
commander's back straightened out. His smirk turned into a wince as the girl walked into the chambers. Whoever she was, she must have been younger than me. Despite that, her voice carried the weight of her authority, something which Orem clearly relented to. Her aura was as cold and rigid as stone. Her disposition was probably equally so. Celeste McCoy has a right to counsel, and I know who you are, Lady Timora. She turned to Orem, who was almost half his size, but he was practically flinching at her every word.
Well, the girl hasn't been processed yet.
She just let out an irritated sigh as she waved him away. Let them through.
What?
Let them through before I throw you into the cell next to hers.
Yes, lady. Miss Steelwind.
Steelwind? Arya Steelwind, occupation prosecutor, age 18. A prosecutor from the nobility who hails from House Steelwind, one of the 4 pillar families in Wyvernguard. She was the daughter of Grand General Lucio Steelwind, leader of Wyvernguard's military. It's hard to read her emotions, even with the Eye of Horus. She gave me a passing glance as if she were silently appraising me. She walked out of the dungeons without another word. Orem grumbled under his breath as he led us to Celeste's cell. I had to wade through a thickening fog of emotions as we descended further into the dungeons. The collective anger and sorrow of the prisoners was choking me. I'd always hated crowds. I could never shut out the storm of thoughts and emotions that came with them. But I tried my best to keep it together. Celeste was going through a lot more than I was. Oh! Celeste was curled up on the cold floor, arms wrapped around her knees. When she saw us, she scrambled to her feet. What are you doing here? We know about what happened to your father. I'm so sorry, Celeste. I still can't believe it. Thanks. The response came out hollowly. You're the Inquisition's prime suspect in the murder, and they're planning to push your case to trial. You'll be brought to court in a few hours. What? No one told me anything! My mentor scoffed in disgust. She was all too familiar with this. They're planning to convict you before you even realized you were on trial. Celeste, Miss Timora is the best defense attorney in Wyverngard. She can help you. You've been supporting your family from your work as a mercenary, is that correct? Did you just say mercenary? I wish that wasn't... I wish you didn't, like, tell us that earlier. But that's another issue I had with this game from, like, the original version, which apparently they haven't changed. You shouldn't be giving all this information when it's a surprise to the characters. Celeste obtained evidence. Celeste's occupation. Celeste is a mercenary by trade. It's a little unexpected, but who am I to judge? From your financial history, it appears that you can afford my services. How would you even know that? That's not important. Gravelog. What matters is that if I'm representing you, your case is as good as won. Okay. So it was Can. I don't like how pressing on the log also presses, like, goes to the next screen, next dialogue. I don't even know what happened. Then tell me. Celeste hesitated, her shoulders tensing at the memory. I got into an argument with my dad, and I left it clear in my head. I'm pretty sure this is new. I don't think this was in the original version. Tyrion found me a bit after that. I think it was a few hours after I left. When we came back, we saw the knights outside. That's when they arrested me. Celeste, if I'm going to be your attorney, I need to know everything that happened. What? They found your sword inside his body, and there were traces of transmutation magic around the crime scene. There aren't any other registered mages in Cornhaven. I need you to tell me the truth. I just told you everything that happened. What are you... She looked down, confused, before her face tightened into a scowl. You actually think I did it, don't you? You think I was the one who killed him? Wait, Miss Timora. Before I left the tavern to look for her, I ran into Flintheart. He was still alive. And how much time passed between that and when you found her? It was probably about 2 hours. Which means there are 2 hours where she wasn't accounted for. We can work around that, but the prosecution will still... No! I didn't do this! She's telling the truth, Miss Timora. Celeste would never do something like this. Cuthbert, you can't just believe every innocent girl who bats her eyes at you. That is not what this is. Well, did you see that she's innocent? Can you tell me with that with certainty? Celeste was being defensive at the moment, too guarded for me to read anything substantial with the eye of Horus. I didn't see it, but I know that she's innocent. Look, either way, we need to construct a proper alibi, so I can... No! How can I work with you if you don't even believe me? Do you even understand the situation you're in? I know exactly what's happening. My dad's dead, and whoever killed him is still out there. Don't be naive. You're a commoner. You're lucky I'm even here. There isn't a single attorney other than me who will defend someone like you. Yeah? Well, what about him? I blinked, confused for a moment before I realized that she was pointing at me. You're also a defense attorney, right? I am, but... He's just a kid, McCoy. He's never even defended a case before. I don't care! At least he doesn't think I'm a murderer! Celeste, hold on. So you can take your attitude and leave. I don't need your help. Fine, have it your way. But when you're staring down the gallows and begging me to appeal your conviction, I'll be charging you triple my rate. I don't like Timora. I mean, there are other reasons that will be seen later in the future, in future cases, but like, even with this, I don't like her! Before I could understand what was going on, Miss Timora turned away and stormed out. As she reached the door, she looked back at me expectantly. I froze. I knew I wasn't in any position to handle a case like this. That said, I also knew I couldn't have her face this alone. My mentor let out a quiet sigh before quietly exiting the dungeons. Sorry, I didn't mean to put you in the middle of that. I can go talk to her. I'm sure she'll come back and take your case. No, I meant what I said. I don't want her help. Celeste, this is serious. Your conviction might as well be a foregone conclusion to the courts. Without Miss Timora, you'll... I'll be fine. I know I just pulled you into this without asking. If you want to walk away, I'll understand. I'll figure something out. She tugged a few times at the cell door separating us. I could have swore I saw the metal bars bending. I exhaled slowly. I knew I wasn't ready for this. I can't stand by and do nothing. I'll take your case, if you'll have me. Really? But there's one thing I need you to tell me. The Arcane Inquisition was called to the scene. I had no idea how they even knew magic had been used, but their presence could only mean one thing. Are you a mage? Yeah, I am. When that villager confronted me before, he called her a bastard. It made a lot more sense now. Do you have noble blood? What does that have to do with anything? The ability to use magic is hereditary. Almost every mage descends from the nobility in some way. If you have birth parents in the nobility, you might be able to use their influence to our advantage. I don't need anyone's help. I'm a McCoy. That's all I need to know about myself. It seemed best not to push that matter further then. Even so, that's probably why they arrested you. What? Miss Timora mentioned it earlier. A town of farmers like Cornhaven wouldn't have any other registered mages. It's a good thing you registered with the kingdom. Would have had just added one extra charge if you hadn't. But they found traces of magic at the scene of the crime. They have no choice but to suspect you. Are you serious? I'll be honest, I'm not sure how much help I'll really be. Miss Timora said it herself. I've never defended a client before. Is everything really going to be okay? Why would I say something like that? A defense attorney should be putting their clients at ease. But no matter what, I'll get you an acquittal. It doesn't matter who stands in my way. Man, king, or god. What? Sorry, it's just... I used to say that a lot as a kid, No, it's okay. At least it made her laugh. At least it made her laugh. Anyway, take some time to rest up. The trial will begin in a few hours. I couldn't imagine what she was going through. She not only lost her father, but she was also being framed for his murder. This was exactly why I became an attorney. To defend people exactly like her. Stories like hers were far too common. But this time, I had the power to change it. She was putting her trust in me. I would make sure she wouldn't regret that. Hi guys! It still hadn't sunk in yet. I was standing in a real courtroom. I'd only ever acted as Miss Timora's assistant. Now I was front and center at the defense table. Are you okay? Did I assume that whoever the artist was couldn't figure out a way to have a side profile look good, I guess. I don't want to be rude, but like either that or they just didn't want to draw it, which both are fair. But it's weird just seeing her stare at me. Yes, of course. Maybe if I kept saying that, it would end up being true. Hi, Ariane. Why is her elbow over the nameplate? That woman from the dungeons was also here. She must have been the prosecutor for Celeste's trial. No wonder she was able to order around the commander like that. I could feel her piercing glare burrowing into me. Why was she looking at me like that? Was she trying to intimidate me? Because it was definitely working.
Order!
Court is now in session for the trial of Celeste McCoy. The prosecution is ready, Your Honor. Oh! The defense is also ready, Your Honor. Very well. Prosecutor Stillwind, could you please list the charges? Occupation Judge, age 80, Arcane Art Nun. What's her Arcane Art? Evocation. The defendant is Celeste McCoy, a mercenary by trade and a registered maid. Mage. Not maid. She's charged with second-degree murder and negligent misuse of the arcane arts. The crime occurred within the McCoy Tavern, a local inn that was shut down for years ago. Those who lived nearby reported hearing a loud arguing coming from within the building around 1 a.m. At 1:08 a.m., a carriage driver entered the tavern to investigate the disturbance. It was there that he found the victim, the defendant's sword, impaled within his body. The Inquisition has provided an autopsy report and documentation for the sword. Obtained evidence, autopsy report. Died at 1:12 a.m. after being stabbed from behind with a magical blade. Fatal wound shows heavy traces of transmutation magic. Obtained evidence, Celeste's sword. The alleged murder weapon. It's an ornately designed sword, but it has no magical properties. What was the defendant's relationship with the victim? I see that they share the same last name. The defendant is the victim's daughter, but not by blood. She was adopted into the family when she was an infant. Her birth parents are currently unknown. I see. What an unfortunate turn of events. To begin, the prosecution would like to call Commander Urim White to the stand. Witness, please state your name and occupation for the court. Witness, name and occupation.
Name's Orm White. I'm the commander of the Arcane Inquisition.
Commander, please testify about the details of the Inquisition's investigation.
Yeah.
Witness testimony.
We got a call late at night. Someone found a dead body inside the McCoy Tavern. When we arrived on the scene, we found Flintheart McCoy dead on the floor. The defendant's sword was still in his chest. We have a bunch of witnesses who heard the victim and defendant in a loud argument before the body was called in. The argument must have turned ugly, because the defendant killed the old man using her magic sword.
This was going to be difficult. The defendant's sword was the murder weapon. It was possible that the murderer used it to frame her. That must have meant the crime was premeditated.
Mr. Cuthbert, you may begin your cross-examination. Mr. Cuthbert?
Where was this supposed to start again? I need to prove that Celeste was innocent, but they found her sword in the body. Tyrion! This is the part where you say something, right? The longer I stood there, the more I noticed everyone staring at me. I could feel the case cracking. Each moment of silence was just another blow to my credibility. I wanted to face Ruby Timora today, not her bumbling sidekick. Your Honor, the defense clearly has nothing to say against the prosecution's overwhelming evidence.
Yep, this whole thing's pretty open and shut.
No, wait! I'm so sorry, Tyrion. I didn't do enough for Frey. Now she's... Miss Timora, does this mean they're going to... Wait, Miss Timora, does this mean they're going to execute her? No, not again. Was I seriously going to watch that happen again? Tyrion! Ow! Her palm cracked across my face. I stumbled back and almost fell over. She had every right to be angry. but that wasn't what I saw on her face. I'm sorry, Celeste, Stop! Just listen to me. You trained for this, right? You know what to do. I have never done this before. She cursed under her breath. She searched her mind for an answer. Then just treat it like it's something that you have done before. I don't know, you're good at chess, right? So just treat this whole thing like you're playing chess. What? I don't know. Yesterday you were calm and you were focused. So just channel that feeling. Excuse me. I don't know if you heard that, but I burped. Look at this. Look at the pieces on the board or something like that. He made a lot of statements. Every statement that he made, every word that came out of his mouth, they were all just pieces on the board. A match wasn't won from the start. It came from developing the pieces I had and taking every advantage that presented itself. I apologize, Your Honor. The defense is ready to begin the cross-examination. Seeing as this is your first trial, Mr. Cuthbert, I'll overlook it this one time. Here we go. Thank the gods. That actually worked. I needed to carefully examine every statement he made, line by line. The key to every cross-examination was to identify which statements contradicted the evidence in my notes. Once I did that, I needed to present the contradicting evidence. Cross-examination. Hey, we're staring each other down. Cross-examinations. You've started cross-examining a witness. The key to each cross-examination is to determine which part of the witness's testimony contradicts any of the items in your notes. Use the arrows to carefully examine each statement in the witness's testimony. Identify the contradicting statement and present the item that contradicts it.
We got a call late at night. Someone found a dead body inside the McCoy Tavern.
What time did you get this call? And who discovered the body?
The call came at 1:08 a.m. The witness wanted to remain incognito.
It wasn't unusual for a witness to request anonymity. It was well within their rights. But it would have been a lot easier if I could cross-examine that witness directly. What happened when you arrived, Commander?
When we arrived on scene, we found Flintheart McCoy dead on the floor. The defendant's sword was still in his chest.
How are you so sure that the sword was my client's?
Her sword is made out of some weird alloy. I think it was forged out of the country or something. It had to be to mistake something like that. It'd be hard to mistake something like that.
We also have several eyewitnesses who verified that the sword belonged to the defendant. She made no effort to hide it from the public. Quite the contrary. She was quite proud to show it off. Even so, that doesn't necessarily mean that she was the one who stabbed him.
Yeah, well... We have a bunch of witnesses who heard the victim and defendant in a loud argument before the body was called in.
How did they know it was my client who was arguing with the victim? Tyrion, you were there. Yeah, what he said.
You were there, weren't you? Don't tell me you didn't hear them. Every witness we talked to knew it was them.
I couldn't really argue with him there. Celeste and Flintheart had very distinct voices, especially when they were raised.
That argument must have turned ugly, because the defendant killed the old man using her magic sword.
I was there when the argument took place. Flintheart was still alive when my client left the tavern. Perhaps. But how do you know that she didn't return to murder her father afterwards? Weren't there plenty of other people around who could have committed the crime?
That tavern's been closed for years. The defendant, the victim, and Timora were the only ones there before the body was discovered. Plus, the murder weapon was her sword.
It was a given that Miss Timora didn't do this. Another person must have shown up at the tavern after Celeste and I left. Could it have been the witness who discovered the body? His testimony was straightforward, but that's exactly what would help me. Celeste was innocent, so there had to be a flaw in his logic. I just needed to compare each statement to each piece of evidence in my notes. Once I found the contradiction, I just need to present that piece of evidence to the contradicting statement. Is it this one? It might be. Yeah, magic sword.
Objection!
Commander White, are you sure that the victim was killed using the defendant's sword?
Yeah, it was pretty obvious from the crime scene.
I think I'd have to disagree with you on that. If your testimony is true, the defendant's sword couldn't have been the murder weapon.
What are you talking about, kid? The sword was inside his body.
That may be, but take another look at the autopsy report. It says that the fatal wound contained traces of transmutation magic. You even testified that the sword was magical.
So, what's your point?
It's simple. How could a non-magical blade leave traces of magic in the wound?
What?
My client's sword may look unique, but it's entirely non-magical. It couldn't have left those traces of transmutation on the wound.
That doesn't make a lick of sense. The sword didn't kill him. And why was it in the body?
There's only one reasonable explanation. The wound was created magically, and someone shoved the sword into the wound afterward.
And that girl's a mage. She could have easily whacked that old man using magic.
Why would she murder the victim using a spell, only to then stab him with her sword? She would just be incriminating herself. If anything, this series of events proves something else. Someone used magic to murder the victim, then pushed my client's sword into the wound to frame her.
Objection!
Hi there. Don't get ahead of yourself, Mr. Cuthbert. Your Honor, the defense is suggesting that another person used the sword to frame the defendant. But the defendant clearly cast a spell on the sword. Shit. No, what? Press the text log. I'm pressing the text log. What? Fine, okay, I guess I just can't get the text log. Okay. My bad, guys. My bad.
Alright, I see where you're going with this.
More testimony.
The sword itself ain't magical, but spells can be cast on it.
Oh, there! Now I can do it. Okay. Don't get ahead of yourself, Mr. Cuthbert. Your Honor, the defense is suggesting that another person used the sword to frame the defendant. But the defendant clearly cast a spell on the sword at the time of the murder.
She cast a spell?
Commander, testifies to how magic was used during the murder.
What?
Alright, okay.
The defendant over there. The spell compendium's got a spell called Mage Blade. She must have cast it on her sword before stabbing the old man. That spell is the reason why we found traces of magic on the body.
Evidence obtained. Mage Blade. For the duration of this spell, the edges of this object, usually a blade, become unnaturally sharp, making it more effective at slashing through tough material. While under the effects of this spell, the object emits a yellow radiant glow. The target object must be no longer than a 5-foot cube. A spell compendium listed every spell a mage knew how to cast. Let's see how this looks in here. Hi guys! Hi everybody! Spells. School, transmutation. Incantation, Arcane. Gesture, none. Duration, while concentrating. Concentration, yes. It was a fundamental piece of evidence that proved which spell a mage could and couldn't use. Celeste, do you have your spell compendium with you? No. My dad was the last person who had it. What? Why would Flintheart have her spell compendium? But he's right. I know how to cast Mage Blade. It's actually the only spell I know. I would like to add that we found traces of transmutation magic on the defendant's sword as well. As I'm sure the court knows, magical traces stay on objects for 48 hours after the spell is cast on them. Evidence updated. Celeste Sword, the alleged murder weapon. It's an ornately designed sword, but it has no magical properties. Traces of transmutation magic were detected on it. Those 48 hours really tighten the timeline for cases like this. Because of that, crimes needed to be investigated before all the magical traces disappeared from the crime scene. It also gave the courts the perfect excuse to push these cases through the system as quickly as possible.
Mr. Cuthbert, you may begin your cross-examination.
Why are you looking up? The commander's testimony was a lot vaguer this time. He probably wasn't expecting to give a second testimony. Pressing his statements really helped in situations like this. Doing that might reveal new pieces of evidence that I could use against him. Cross-examination. Pressing statements. Sometimes the contradicting statement isn't always apparent in a witness's testimony. You can press statements during a cross-examination to gain more information about that specific statement. Pressing can sometimes reveal new statements or evidence you can use.
The sword itself ain't magical, but spells can be cast on it.
Are you accusing my client of casting a spell and channeling it through her sword? There are a vast number of spells that operate like that. Spells from the School of Transmutation are almost exclusively channeled through an object. Your client clearly learned a spell that would aid in her work as a mercenary. Speaking of which...
The defendant over there. The spell compendium's got a spell called Mage Blade.
Mage Blade? It's a transmutation spell that sharpens and empowers my sword. Wouldn't it be excessive for the defendant to use a spell like that on the victim? He wasn't wearing any armor or protection at the time of his death. The victim and the defendant were in an intense argument. Perhaps she used the spell in a fit of rage. Perhaps she simply cast it out of habit. What matters is that the sword undeniably has traces of transmutation magic on it.
She must have cast it on her sword before stabbing the old man.
Why would she go to the trouble of doing that? Her sword alone would have been enough to murder a defenseless person.
Mages are always looking for an excuse to throw their power around. There's no rhyme or reason to it.
Isn't that just your own personal bias, Commander? We don't need to understand why the defendant did what she did. The fact of the matter is that traces of magic were found on the body and the sword. Do you have any evidence to the contrary, Mr. Cuthbert?
That spell is the reason why we found traces of magic on the body.
About that, spells only leave magical traces on the objects they target, and those traces are only detectable for 48 hours. My client cast Mage Blade like you said. There shouldn't have been any magical traces on the wound. There would only be traces on the sword.
We always find random magical traces at crime scenes. We can't always explain each trace we detect.
That sounds more like a failure on the Inquisition's part than anything else. Can we really trust that your knights examine the crime scene properly?
You don't believe me? Take a look at this picture.
I'd seen pictures of dead bodies while studying Miss Timor's past cases, but there was always something unnerving about seeing someone I'd met yesterday. I carefully inspected the photo, taking great care to keep it out of Celeste's view.
You can see it there, plain as day. The sword has the highest concentration of transmutation traces.
But why didn't those traces fully cover the weapon? Did the transmutation spell damage the sword somehow? Crime scene photo. A picture of Flintheart McCoy after he was murdered. It shows the traces of transmutation magic that were on the sword. Why was this picture not brought to my attention, Orim?
What would be the point of that? This entire case is open and shut.
The prosecutor seemed unnerved by something.
You can see it right in the photo. She stabbed him right through the chest using mage blade.
He was right about the photo. It clearly showed that he was stabbed from the front. So why did that bother me so much? His testimony was a little bit vague this time. Trusting his statements might prove useful in a situation like this. That would let me ask questions about his testimony and discover more details about the case. Oh, I can present people here. This is the autopsy I have to present, right? Not this. Yeah, right through the chest. I do want to actually view this, though. Yeah. Okay.
Objection!
I'm sorry, Commander White, but you've shown us an even more glaring contradiction.
Oh yeah?
In your testimony, you said that my client stabbed the victim right through the chest.
You can see it right there in the picture. So where's your contradiction?
That's exactly the problem, Commander. Your picture undeniably shows that my client's sword impaled the victim from the front. But if that's really true, why does the autopsy say that he died from being stabbed in his back?
What?
Orem, you were supposed to submit everything you had to me. Why did you withhold this photo?
There was no point. She's a mage. It couldn't have been anyone else.
Murmurs rippled through the gallery. Even the judge shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Our justice system may have been corrupt, but they'd never get away with such a blatant error.
Order!
Order in the court! Mr. Cuthbert, what is the meaning of this? Your Honor, this photo clearly shows my client's sword impaling him from the front. Which means that there is only one way for the autopsy to be true. The sword would have needed to be inserted into the wound after the victim had died.
That's crazy.
Then why don't you enlighten me, Commander White? Do you think my client impaled the victim hilt first with her sword?
Aye.
Or do you think she stabbed him through the chest, removed it, then placed her sword in the body to frame herself?
Well, that's...
No. What happened here is obvious. The real murderer stuck the sword through the victim's wound to implicate my client. But they made a careless mistake and stuck the sword through the opposite side. You're actually pretty good at this.
Objection!
It appears I underestimated you. But you've still gotten ahead of yourself.
Is that so, Miss Steelwind?
Let me ask the defense one more question, Mr. Cuthbert. Oh, let me ask the defense one question, Mr. Cuthbert. If your client didn't kill Flintheart McCoy, then who did? How should I know? If I'm not mistaken, it's the commander's job to figure that out. Oh, I'm well aware of the commander's incompetence, but one fact still stands. There were magical traces on the wound and the sword. Would you like me to tell you how many mages live in that small town? I didn't like where she was going with this. Only one. The defendant is the only registered mage who lives in Cornhaven. Right. Cornhaven was a village of farmers. Celeste was the only mage there. The defendant was also established to have been with the victim minutes before his time of death. In addition to that, I have several witnesses who heard them arguing. You, on the other hand, can only implicate an unknown assailant. I doubt you could even tell me who they are.
Even so, it's clear that the prosecution can't reliably prove how the victim was murdered. I can't say that the prosecution's evidence is irrefutable, but the evidence still leans heavily against the defense. There are far too many unanswered questions for me to pass a verdict. And this is what I mean with the pacing issues. I feel like this first court day goes fast. Like too fast. It's only 30 minutes-ish. And it says 40 here, but like the first 13 minutes of the video, or we were in the dungeon, not in court. We will give the Inquisition time to investigate the crimes and clear these unknowns. I suggest that they conduct their investigation more thoroughly this time. We will resume the trial tomorrow morning. Court is adjourned.
Hello, Cuthbert.
Oh, Miss Timora.
I tensed as she approached me. I'd been so focused on Celeste's case, I hadn't even thought about how I'd left things with my mentor. Scaled Lord. He had probably been in the gallery too. He must have seen how I froze up during the first cross-examination. Your job is to put your client at ease, not the other way around. Sorry. I'm sure she was just knocking you out of it, but everyone saw her become violent with you. That's not exactly helpful if you want to prove she's not a violent murderer. Make no mistake, the prosecution will use that to their advantage. What's wrong with you? He did fine! McCoy, if the Inquisition didn't botch the investigation, Cuthbert would have never been able to buy this much time. In case you've forgotten, he's my defense attorney, not you! I don't get why he has to take notes from you. No, she's right, Celeste. I need to do better. I can't ever let myself freeze up like that again. I might not be so lucky next time. Other than that, I'll admit that you did well. You cross-examined the commander adequately, and you handled Steelwind's rebuttals as well as you could have. I remembered how Prosecutor Steelwind was glaring at me at the start of the trial. Even thinking about it was enough to make me nauseous. Steelwind. Why did that name sound so familiar? Wait, isn't House Steelwind one of the Four Pillars families? That's right! Lucio Steelwind is the Grand General of Wyvern Guard's military. Hasn't he been caught up in a lot of scandals recently? Scandals? He's been having people killed by the thousands. Right. I remember seeing several articles about him in the Rathlum Gazette. In recent years, groups voicing their grievances against the crown had begun to surface in the countryside. King Olivier would answer their complaints by unleashing Steelwind soldiers on these so-called insurrectionists. More often than not, the peaceful protests turned violent, leading to bloody retaliations from Lucio's forces. And Arya is Lucio Steelwind's only heir. When I saw her name on the docket, I wrote her off as a noble role-playing for fun. But she's good. Better than most of the prosecutors I've faced. She's taking this seriously. And with what Flintheart was doing, I can't help but wonder if the prosecutor is acting on her father's behalf. Do you think Prosecutor Steelwind is protecting the real killer? The Inquisition's knights were the first responders to the scene. Didn't that strike you as odd? Right. In a small town like Cornhaven, the village militia would be the first people there. For the Inquisition to respond so quickly, they would have needed to know that magic was used at all. This whole mess feels a little too staged, and with the Steelwind involved, this whole situation reeks of corruption. I'm sure locking up Flynnhart's daughter would send a clear message to his allies. But if that were true, why did she help us in the dungeons? Either way, this works out in our favor. I can't fight the Steel Winds on a battlefield, but I can fight them in a courtroom. On that subject, I've been meaning to give you this. My spell compendium? I grabbed it from the dining room before the Inquisition arrived. They have a bad habit of misplacing evidence, like pieces of evidence like this. Celeste's spell compendium. Celeste McCoy's spell compendium. It contains the formula for only one spell, Mage Blade. So, this is your spell compendium, and it only has one spell. Very large book for one spell, Celeste. Mage Blade. The prosecution will need to prove that Mage Blade was used in the murder. It will restrict their plan of attack, which will give you an edge over them. But I still have no idea who actually did this. Celeste, I need to talk to you about what your father was doing. Oh. She glanced at the bailiff. He was looming close, staring daggers at her. I should go. Looks like they can't wait to throw me back in that cell. Wait, I still... She turned away and quickly walked off without another word. Miss Timora just shook her head. She's practically begging for a conviction at this rate. Bringing up her late father may have struck a nerve. I would need to be more delicate next time. I can speak with her in the dungeons later. Right now, I want to take a look at the crime scene. With how negligent the Inquisition were, I doubt they'd found anything. If you're planning to investigate the crime scene, you'll need this. She reached into her coat and pulled out a small blue runestone. I froze for a moment, staring wide-eyed at it. Is that... Obtained evidence! Attorney's runestone! A magical runestone that allows you to take pictures of crime scenes and write notes telepathically. Every attorney has one. It's almost like a badge for them. It's an attorney's runestone. I had it commissioned for you after you passed the exam last month. You've had one ready this entire time? Cuthbert, are you crying? No! I wiped my tears and delicately stored the runestone in the pocket of my jacket. You embarrassed them today. Don't expect them to be sloppy again. As much as I hate to admit it, your investigative mind is sharper than mine. If anyone can get through this, it's you. Thank you. She turned to take a seat at the bench near the courtroom entrance. It looked like she would be staying here until the case was over. I tucked Celeste's spell compendium into my jacket. I hadn't slept. My body still ached from the carriage ride. I still didn't know whether I was truly up to this, but none of that mattered. Celeste was counting on me, and I wouldn't let anyone get away with killing Flynnhart, even if the Steel Winds were involved. And that's the end of the trial, the first trial. We will continue, we'll investigate. We'll do a proper investigation and look into the crime scene, talk to Celeste and other stuff next time. Bye-bye!